breathe underwater.
Y'all know what's going on. It's time for another episode of Doing Time with Joe. I'm your host, Joe Bacon. Welcome to the show, y'all. Now look here. Kevin has come up with this plan to take over the crew, right? You remember when he was down at the police department and the detective gave him a card and he told him that you'd rather be our friend than our enemy. And if you ever need us, to call us. You remember that? Well, while he's in this house by himself, drinking and smoking, he comes up with this idea to use the police to get rid of the crew that has been loyal to him, that has had nothing but his best interest at heart, considering they're in the streets, and if there is a such thing as having somebody's best interest at heart. But they have done nothing wrong to him as far as the game goes. Nothing. Splitting everything with him equally, all the way across the board. They were making so much money that everybody enjoyed the benefits of the game that they were involved in. Everybody. This is one of those situations where, man, you just don't believe that people are being that concerned about each other's welfare. They all are benefiting equally. And it was true. But what they didn't calculate is you never underestimate the next man's greed, right? And greed can come in different ways. That greed can be driven by the insecurities that another person has about themselves. He was greedy for attention. He was greedy for validation. He was greedy for somebody to acknowledge that he was more than just muscle. He wanted people to see him. And he was going to make it happen, one way or the other. So he comes up with this plan to pick them off. Now, keep in mind, if you're going to turn on somebody, that means you got to give something up about them. You got to tell the police something that they can take action on. But if you do that, you got to remember what comes with it. Now, you keep in mind, he wanted to take over the operations. So if he tells on the operation, then there's no operation for him to take over, right? Makes sense, right? Right? So what he does, he don't tell on the operation. He sets them up one by one, not in concert with the police. You know how people wear a wire and all of that old kind of stuff, and he called? No, that ain't what he did. That ain't what he did. He made sure at different times that each and every one of them had drugs on them, right? And he wrote these notes to the police. He wrote these notes to the police. Anonymous notes, and was having them sent to the police department. Listen to me. Let me tell you how detailed he was in trying to make sure that his identity wasn't known or found out, and at the same time tell the police what they could do to catch them. Anytime he got ready to write one of these letters, he would put on latex gloves, right? Latex gloves. Make sure that the notebook paper that he was writing on was brand new, unopened. So when he opened it, it was the first time the paper would be loose with somebody touching it, but he touched it with gloves on. He made sure that the envelopes were brand new, bought in the box. He made sure that the stamps were not licked, but water was put on them. He made sure that when he dropped it in the mailbox, right, that it was dropped in the mailbox in a place that was so far removed with no cameras anywhere to be seen in the vicinity so they could ID who it was. And even when he did that, he went to the mailbox in a car that didn't belong to him. And he had on hoodies and everything so he could not be recognized, and dropped these notes. Because the police, they run all of that down. And when they got these notes, he mentioned places, amounts. He mentioned friends that he thought would be a threat to him, that were cool with them. He was trying to take out anybody that he thought could come back and figure out what was going on. Because everybody is getting popped but him. Everybody. And now people are talking, because now when you getting caught up and you going back and forth to court, when in the past, nobody knew what was going on. Nobody knows these routes. Nobody knows these drop-off places, these pickup places, other than the crew. Now all of a sudden, it's like the police knows everything. How does it happen? And how are you the only one that's not getting caught? So the rest of them, they get together, they start thinking, say, wait a minute, something ain't right here. Because they've been caught 2 and 3 times. They got pending cases, not cases. Making bond, getting out. Making bond, getting out. Having to appear in court. They're spending more time going down to see the lawyers and going back and forth to court than they are getting money. And that's how the game goes. You become so wrapped up in everything trying to keep your freedom that now you're selling dope to make money to keep your freedom, as opposed to selling dope to make money and go have fun and buy things and improve on your life as you see it. So they sitting around, they started talking. They said, man, what is the one thing that we all have in common? What's the one thing that's happening to us? And they said, man, the only one out of all of us that has not been busted is Kevin. Why is that? Is he smarter than us? Is he doing something that we're not doing? And one of the brothers said, look here, man, let's just call it like it is, man. All of this stuff, all of these routes, all of these places, all of these things that we've been caught with, nobody knew about these things but all of us and Kevin. Now all of a sudden the police know. It's got to be Kevin. Then he had a couple of the brothers like, no, it can't be. He wouldn't do this to us. Why would he do that? Why would he cut off his nose to spite his face? It don't make sense, right? It don't make sense. So that made everybody doubt that it was Kevin. So now they're still trying to figure out, but they don't have a lot of time to try to figure out what's going on. They got to fight these cases too. So they all lay back. And they get together and they have a meeting. And they tell Kevin, say, look, you're going to have to take over. Because we got to lean back. And so they start telling him, against a couple of them's better judgment, they start telling him the people, places they need to meet, the other guys, the plugs, the amounts, where the money is dropped off, things that he never had any concern for before. Now he's being given the whole game. He's being included in a way that he always has wanted to be included. But see, they don't realize that this is the plot. Once he gets all of this information, he's in charge in his mind. But see, his partners, they're smart. They're smart. They let the plug know, look, if there's a problem, we may need a favor. And that favor may be the dirty. Do you understand what I'm saying, y'all? And the plug was like, let us know. You just let us know. Now, they didn't tell him. They didn't tell the plug that Kevin was the one that they might have to take care of. They didn't tell him, man, because they wanted to continue to do business. See, that's how dirty the game is, too. That's how dirty the game is, too. See, they are trying to make sure that they can protect their interests, but at the same time, they are putting the plug in jeopardy if Kevin is the person that's doing all of this. But you got to play your cards close to your vest. That's how the game goes. So now Kevin is being introduced to all these people, and he's starting to make sure everything is still running smoothly and all this and that. And he's throwing the police off, still writing these anonymous notes. But see, one of the detectives, he's smart. He starts to think, he said, we got cases, good cases, on everybody except for Kevin. Now, you know how on these police shows where they have the organization, a chart up there, they got pictures of everybody and they got the string running from this person to that person to this person to that person. The one person up on that board that had nothing attaching to him other than belonging to the organization by way of cases was Kevin. And Kevin had all of these problems months before, like he was having a mental breakdown. So one of the detectives, he got smart. He said, he's got to be the key to this puzzle. Because, see, this is the problem that they were having. They based a lot of their search warrants off of these anonymous notes. It turned out to be good. It turned out to be right. But they said a whole lot of things to the judge to get these search warrants. For example, they tell the judge that this is a confidential informant. They made the judge believe that they knew who this was when they had no idea who it was. So they need this person, whoever it is, to testify that they are the ones that wrote these letters, if these cases are going to stick, if these guys decide to go to trial. They need them. They have to find out. So they got two investigations going. They got one investigation going on all of them to make sure that this case is solid. And then they got a whole separate investigation trying to figure out who's sending them these notes. So this detective, he pulls up on Kevin one day out in the neighborhood. And all out of the blue, he tells him, he says, we know it's you. Kevin looks at him like, what are you talking about? He said, we know it's you that wrote those notes. We know it's you. And Kevin said, what are you talking about? Playing him all the way to the left. I'm talking about Kevin has gone all the way to that space in his mind of being a sociopath. This man can look you straight in your eye and lie to you like it ain't nothing. Gone. And that's what happens to you in the game. The deeper you go down the hole, the further detached you become from reality. You don't even have any direction of what's right and what's wrong anymore. It's all about self-preservation. So he tells the detective, I don't know what you're talking about. He said, we're going to need you. The detective dismisses everything he says, and he keeps talking to him as if it's solid. We got it. We understand. We know. Keep playing the game. Keep providing us with this information. But Kevin keeps playing his role like, I don't know what you're talking about. So he eventually says, are you done? I need to go. And then the detective says, you're not under arrest. I didn't make you stay here. You can leave anytime you want to. So Kevin pulls off, and the detective waves at him. So we'll see you soon. That's how they always do. So now Kevin is spooked because in his mind, he figured that they would be happy with just busting these guys and taking them off the streets. He didn't think about he might have to testify. He didn't think about that. So now he starts to panic. So now he starts to think, who else, in case I do have to testify, who's a threat to me on these streets? Who would be a threat to me? Who would retaliate against me if the guys, his friends, y'all, if they figure out that I'm the one? So he thinks about the relatives and cousins and stuff like that. And some of them are in jail, in prison, right? So he drops another note and implicates the individuals that are still incarcerated as being a part of this drug ring. No evidence to connect them at all, but he tells the police this. And this is how dangerous that game is. Let me tell you. One of those individuals that was still in prison, was about to go up for parole. And when his name shows up in this letter, this confidential letter as being part of a criminal enterprise that was on the streets. That information made its way to the Department of Corrections. And then they started to tap and listen in on his phone calls. And they didn't lead to anything. And they chalked it up as he's just slick. They didn't conceive of the idea that he had nothing to do with this. See, that's how they see us. We're always wrong. We're always guilty of something. But the phone calls proved otherwise. But that didn't matter to the parole board. Because when he went in front of that parole board, they denied his parole for another 2 years. They said they didn't think he was ready. They didn't think he would conform to the conditions of parole. What he didn't know is that they had this information from the authorities on the streets. And that was the main reason that he got denied. So when he calls home and he's talking to his family about it, his dad that's in the street tells him, said, look, son, I just never thought that this might have something to do with it. He said, but, your cousins that's in jail, one of those notes that got written, now, because they had gotten these notes in their motion for discovery on the evidence that was against them, right? They got these anonymous letters and all of this and that, right? And one of these letters mentions your name. That's what his daddy tells him. And he tells to his dad on the phone, he's like, but I'm not doing anything. And his daddy said, we know that. But your name was mentioned as being a part of this criminal enterprise. And he said, I think that might have had something to do with you getting denied for 2 years. Because this brother done went to school and then got his GED and all of this whole kind of stuff involved in programs, was up for trustee, meaning he could go outside the fence and all of this whole kind of stuff, right, where he was at. But he got denied. So now he's thinking. And without even having talked to some of his cousins that were in custody, some made parole. I mean, not parole, but bond. He starts to think like they were thinking. Who's the only one that didn't get locked up? That's Kevin. Why? Everybody else got popped. Not to say that, you root for somebody to get popped if you're in the game because you got popped. But things don't make sense when everybody else gets popped. You just as involved as everybody else and you don't get popped. You're not that smart. Nobody's that slick. Unless something's going on. Somebody's got their hand on the scale. Now everybody is looking and thinking Kevin. But he's not concerned because he's so far gone in his mind, he thinks he's smarter than everybody. But he's really spiraling out of control because now he's sitting around in his house again, drinking liquor, smoking weed. Now he's doing a little cocaine too, and he's thinking, who's against me? He thinks everybody's against him. And now that he's on top, he's the man that's calling the shots. The streets know that. So now he's got 2 or 3 females that want to cater to him. But he's so spooked, he don't know who to trust. He'll invite them over and tell them to get out if they say something crazy. In his mind, it's crazy. Or if they ask him too many questions, he's paranoid. He don't know what to do. He can't even enjoy what he worked so hard to get. The one thing that he said he wanted was to be in charge. He can't even enjoy it. He don't know what to do. So now, everybody's wondering what's going on, including him. So the DA gets with all the lawyers and he tells the lawyers, look, because he knows he needs the person that wrote these letters to testify that these letters are authentic because they don't want the judge to end up dismissing the case, all these cases, because the police, the detectives, they manipulated the information that they gave to the judge to get the search warrants anyway. See what I'm saying? So here we go. The lawyers, for all of these guys, they're smart too. They want to know, who is this? Because you have a right to face your accuser, ladies and gentlemen. They want to know who it is. So they advise their clients, let's not plead. Let's go to trial. Because if we go to trial, they got to produce him. They got to produce the witness. Who is this? Who is this person? They can't say anonymous. They can't say anonymous. They want to know how this person knew this, where this information come from, all of this kind of stuff. All of this kind of stuff. They got to produce it. So here we go. The police, the detectives, they pull up on Kevin. They say, we need to take you down. We have some questions for you. Let me show you how they get down, y'all. So we got some questions for you. They take him down to the police department. They get him in the room. And they tell him, look here. We got a search warrant. We got a warrant, subpoena, not a search warrant. I misspoke. We got a subpoena for a handwriting sample. Look here. Sweat jumped immediately on his forehead and on his nose. Sweat. And he looked at him and said, for what? He said, now the police manipulating and lying to him now. Keep that in mind. He said, for what? The police said, well, we have reason to believe that you were involved in some crimes and so on and so forth, and we need a handwriting sample to clear you. Now, see, this is where his arrogance gets involved. So he writes. They tell him what to write because they want to know the types of letters he writes, all the inflections and things that he does with the curves and the cues and all this and that. So he's writing exactly what they want him to say, and he's trying to purposely write it awkward. Let me tell you something. These folks that do this for a living, these handwriting people, they know if you lying. They know if you lying. It's just like if you're trying to change your voice when you're talking on the phone. They know. They know. If you're going to play the game, you might as well go on and put your face on. That's just what it is. So they take the handwriting sample from him and they compare themselves. They put it down side by side. They take it out of the room where they questioned the man. And they got it outside the room. They put it side by side and they look at it and said, it's him. He's trying to make it look like it's not him, but it's him. So the detective and another person come back in the room, right? And they throw both of the tablets, the writing pads, right down on the table, right? And then right beside that, they pull out these envelopes. They got them sealed in the plastic, and it's marked evidence, right? They throw that down on the table and say, look, this one tablet, this one notepad, this is where you just wrote this statement. These letters right here, these are the letters that you sent us saying anonymous, and they have the envelopes in them too, right? They were like right above it. All of it was vacuum sealed. And then they said this last notepad right here, this is the pad that you're going to write on and tell us that you wrote all of this stuff over here. Now, just take your time and look at that. And then when you get ready, then the detective took the ink pen out of his pocket and laid it down on the notepad that was at the end of the table. He said, when you get ready, you go on and fill out that statement right there and let us know that it's you. Because we're going to need you to testify if these guys go to trial. So here go Kevin. He's sitting there. He's looking silly. He's looking down at the stuff. And they could tell. They could tell that he's sweating. He's nervous. So the officer offers him some water. So you want some water? He turns it down. He keeps looking at him, reading that. I said, what are you looking at? It's obvious that it's you. He said, but here's the thing. All of this can go away. All you got to do is tell us that it's you. And we may not need you. But if we do, you got to testify. And if you don't tell us the truth about what's going on, guess what? We're going to tell your friends that it was you anyway. We're going to let their lawyers know, and their lawyers are going to tell them. And whatever it was that you were trying to do, it's going to be over. So now he's thinking about all the people that he's implicated in these letters to protect himself and what could possibly happen to him if they find out that it's him. So he decides to write the confession. He picks up the ink pen and he writes out the confession, telling them it was him and that he was angry at them for what they did and all this and that. He didn't confess to committing any crimes himself. He just confessed to being the one that dropped the anonymous notes. After another couple of hours of talking, they told him that he could go home and that they would get in touch with him if they needed him. They said, we're going to try not to, but if we need you, we're going to give you a call. So now this information has to be shared with the defense. Has to be. That's the law. No way around it. No way around it. And I'm going to tell you how that played out when we come back with this next episode. This has been another episode of Doing Time with Joe. I'm your host, Joe Baker, and I say peace, y'all.
I've been trying to breathe underwater.